And how would you say your harmonic language in your compositions? How did you arrive at that? I mean, what because you have a lot of special sounds in there that I really really love. Um,
I listen to a lot of different music, and including classical music, but also some of the people I worked with, I think, influenced some of my writing.
mm,
For instance, early on, I worked with Mark Copeland, and I picked his brain sometimes,
mm,
and I think even at one point in the early '90s, I asked if I could, study harmony with him or something. He was like, I don't know if he was even teaching, but he was, just come over for an afternoon. I'll show you a few things. So,
mm,
so of course I did, and he showed me some things, and that I could just sort of go with,
hmm
uh, things that I could be working on now, I suppose. I think harmonically, Bill Carrothers as well.
yeah,
Schofield as well. His writing is fantastic, and I've gotten some stuff. I mean, not like I'm trying to steal some stuff, but I played with him a long time, and
sure.
I like his writing. And there's also a piece, for instance, on Snide Remarks that has a chromatic bass line
Mm,
that kind of reminds me of some of the things I was doing with John at the time. In fact, it reminds me a little bit of "I Can See Your House from Here."
oh yeah, yeah,
Reminds me a little bit of that, even
uh,
though I mean the tunes are different, but the concept of the chromatic bass line kind of into it sounds kind of like John stuff.
yeah.
And other people I've been around, like Kevin Hayes and Larry Goldings, Peter Bernstein, all these guys.
Mm,
I'm interested in their world, not just the drum set. You
sure,
know,
yeah. That's how it sounds.
no,
That's how it
good.
sounds. How is that trio with Larry and Kevin? Are you guys gonna ever come back, do a comeback with the trio?
Oh, that would be fun. We had a lot of fun with that. I think now we're doing the trio with Larry and Pete,
Yeah.
which has been around for a long time. And I mean, really, the thing with Larry and Kevin was only maybe I did a couple of little Europe tours with that, actually, and two records. But
Yeah.
um, the records were a bit far apart. Like one of them I think was 2002, and one of them was, I don't know. And I recorded the second one, maybe '06, '07,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. It's not like we did that many gigs, though.
Mm,
Um, so now that we're doing the trio a lot with Peter and Larry, it would be kind of hard to
sure.
keep it, to do the other one right now. I think I did that in a time when it was the trio that we're doing, which is co-led now with Larry and Pete. Uh, it was known as the Larry Goldings trio then, and we weren't working that much in that period, and so I did the other group because well, I wanted to write for it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to write for two keyboards, partly because I can play some keyboards, some piano,
hmm
and I could think kind of orchestrally to
Yeah.
write to write for two keyboards, uh, which was really fun, and they sound great together. So,
Yeah. I love those records, man. They're pretty special for me.
thanks,
Also, the
thank you.
writing on. I mean, I love all your records, but there's something about the keynote speakers. The first one.
I think that's the best one,
hmm That
actually.
you mean the best of all of your records, or the
Um,
best one of the group, or what do you mean?
well, I don't. It's hard to pick between your records, but yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
I think if I had to pick, it might be that one, and
Wow.
and
Yeah.
might be because as far as my writing, I think that group of tunes might be. I don't know.
What always was for me the ones that were nearest to my heart were keynote speakers and telepathy. There was a
Ah,
time when I was obsessing with both of those, but also especially telepathy was.
oh, thanks.
Yeah, I used to tell people that's my favorite record of all time.
Oh, wow.
There was a time when I was like 15, 16. I only listened to that record. Um, Man, also what you did with those guys is really really special. how you wrote
Yeah.
for those two horns, and yeah, the writing on that record too. And also you created a very special vibe. Um, yeah, it's
Hmm.
hard for me to put into words.
Actually, the vibe on both of the records you mentioned is a little bit influenced by the recorded sound on them, I think.
Aha.
And those were recorded in a big room that's no longer there, one of many recording studios in New York City, which are just no longer there. It's called Clinton Studios. The Studio A had a big room, high ceiling. It wasn't super reverberant, but it was high ceiling and had some life to it. And in both keynote speakers and telepathy, we set up the band all in one space.
Mm.
And the late recording engineer David Baker
Mm.
recorded both of those and did a fantastic job, I think. And I miss working with him. He passed a few years ago,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, that was a special sound he got. Telepathy went. That was done to analog, but then of course it had to be transferred to CD. But it was actually done to reel tape.
Yeah.
And for editing, I remember going with David, and he actually had to cut the tape and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I remember it was the only time I ever got to go to a tape cutting session, where
Mm.
it spliced like that, old style.
Yeah.
And then when I did keynote speakers, I recorded analog but had a DAT backup. And I ended up taking the DAT because it sounded better. Weirdly, I
Yeah.
think something was going on with maybe the tape machine by that point wasn't so well maintained. I think
Yeah.
something was weird about the analog later, a few years later. So something maybe with the machine. So,
Yeah.
but the sound on those records I really like.
Also, Snide Remarks has a special sound. Is it the same?
That's a
Same?
different studio. That's Sear. That's all in one room. It's a much smaller room. That's Sear, sixth floor, the old Sear. But excellent studio with great equipment and microphones and like a Neve analog
Mm.
board. And in fact, I just recorded a new record. It's not out. I have to find a way to get it out. But I recorded in February with a trio with Walter Smith and Larry Grenadier.
Great.
And I just mixed with James Farber at that same studio at Sears Sound. So it's making me think of that. But yeah, Sears is a little smaller space, so we had to add like reverb and things like that. But the band was set up together in that room as well. So,
Great. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, or how you go about putting together bands for recordings or for touring or both. How you choose a lineup, because every record you did has a very there's a very interesting very interesting groups you've put together there, and all are different in a way, although they seem to come from a from your love for them and also from a scene in a way, but it seems to me that I get the feeling that you put a lot of thought into who you're playing with and who you're writing for also. In a
yes.
way, writing for their voice, but also challenging them, maybe a little bit, writing for them and also writing for putting something in there that they might not be associated with every time they're playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, as far as the putting together of the groups, I mean, I guess I've usually put together groups with people I've worked with before in other situations, and sometimes many times. So, but sometimes different combinations. Like, for instance, with Snide Remarks, I put that's a good example because. I don't know if Joe Lovano and Eddie Henderson had ever worked together
I don't think
before,
so. Yeah.
and I don't think Bill Carrothers had worked with with either one of them, and um, I thought Eddie and Bill might work because I know Eddie can play very freely harmonically because he played with Herbie Hancock in the early '70s with that group, and Herbie is super free, and
Yeah.
in a different way than Bill, but I mean different sounds, but still like you got to be on your feet, you have to listen for surprises, and also Eddie leaves a lot of space sometimes, and that works well
Yeah.
with Bill, and Joe and Eddie played the heads beautifully together. They played the music, really had an ensemble sound together.
Yeah.
I thought so. I lucked out in a certain way, but I had an intuition about how it might sound, and also in there was Larry Grenadier, and I knew all those guys could play free also, like we could play without music and make some music. All those guys can have big ears and can play free or can play chord changes or bebop or some other direction. Yeah. And with Kevin and Larry, I had heard that they'd played together once and had a good time playing with each other. I think I heard from both of them, that yeah, I play, they've had a chance to jam a little bit. I was, okay, yeah, good idea. I was thinking, maybe that'd be an interesting trio because, there's other tradition of organ, guitar, and drums, of course. It's the famous instrumentation, but I saw no reason why the guitar couldn't be another keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
So, and actually, I knew of a record I had where it's a Groove Holmes record, American organist. The record was from the '60s, but Groove Holmes and Les McCann playing together on something, and I think Groove was walking the bass lines, and I remember liking how that sounds. So I sort of knew how the instruments would sound, and I guess in church music there's organ and piano together quite a bit. So.
And in some of the Miles stuff from the end of the '60s, there's some organ and Rhodes.
A lot of multiple keyboard. That stuff's great. Yeah. Stuff with Chicken Herbie or Joe Zawinul. Yeah. That stuff's really cool. Yeah. I check that stuff out a lot too.
Yeah.
I think I had intuition about how things would sound.
Yeah.
How different musicians would sound together. I also had the experience of working in bands where I thought it wasn't a good combination, so that too. And I won't say which one, or how, but but it happens,
Do you have any kind of secret formula when you feel like it's not working out?
Stay relaxed is one thing, because I know if music is not going well, I might tend to tense up physically, which you don't want to do. I don't know, really on any instrument, but I try to remind myself to stay relaxed,
Yeah.
Sometimes, for instance, if I have trouble playing with like a bass player, for instance, I used to notice my back would start to go out a little bit. It's weird, but so now I remind myself, about that, if I can.
Relaxation seems to be like you seem very relaxed in your playing, and I was actually wondering if that's something that you've spent a lot of thoughts on, or it seems like your whole thing is built on a very good, deep relaxation without being super loose about it, but never seem stressed, or you never seem tense or pushing in a negative way. It all seems very also thoughtful.
Yeah, I try to get into focused. I think the combination I go for when I play is to be relaxed and focused. Those are the two things. And sometimes you have one without the other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
on a on one of my not so good days, I'm not so relaxed, or I'm not so focused, or I'm focused but I'm not relaxed, or I'm relaxed but not really focused, you know. So that's really the combination
Mm.
that I try to get. But I've gotten better at being relaxed when I play, as you know, through experience, through doing it a lot. And I think it's very important for creativity to be relaxed,
Yeah.
because if you're not relaxed, it doesn't flow, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why for instance, one thing a lot of students have problems with when they perform is that they get nervous, and that I think when you're nervous, if I'm nervous, I would tend to rely more on things that I know I can play rather than searching for anything. You know what I mean? Like when I'm relaxed, I feel freer to maybe find some new things
Mm-hmm.
when improvising. Uh, so so yeah, it's important to stay relaxed.
Mm. I was always amazed by your how you sort of build your own vocabulary, sound, and language in one thing. It seems like it's obvious that you checked out all the masters and that
Yeah,
they're important for your development and
no
your
doubt.
sound. But um, in a way, you've really moved the whole tradition forward by developing your own, vocabulary. Um, not everybody does that. It's very special,
Oh,
and
like
um, and I admire that. And I was wondering how you went about that, how you arrived at maybe thinking like that's cool what they do, but I'm going to do it this way. If somebody puts on a record and you're playing, I'll know it in 1 second or 2 seconds every time. Not because I'm great at recognizing people, no, because you're great at being unique.
oh,
I'm
well,
wondering how you arrived at that. Also in terms of tuning and everything. It's a big topic, but
sure. Thanks. I mean, a lot of my stuff, as far as vocabulary, there's a lot of vocabulary that I play that's actually pretty traditional. Like, a lot of guys play the same things, or before me, musicians played some of these things. But I drew from a lot of different sources, and some major ones, some minor ones. I don't mean key color. I mean, major
sure.
figures and people who maybe influenced me just a little bit in one way. Uh, so I listened to a lot of music, a lot of drummers, and um, I cop some of their ideas. Sometimes, but I would try to find different ways to play ideas, whether it was somebody else's or something that I came up with. Um, just to do it a little differently. One thing in terms of what you said about recognizing my sound, some of that is maybe just the sound of it, the sound of the cymbals and the set, and the touch that I play with. All kinds of things go into that, and tuning, um, and my taste in what I like.
Mm.
People who have maybe unusual taste might have tend to find their own sound more easily than just only studying sort of the accepted people on their instruments and this sort of thing, or whoever everyone else is studying. Sometimes I'd try to play things that I heard other drummers play, and I couldn't really play them, so I'd find another way to sort of play them, and it sounds
Mm-hmm.
different. Um, something that's different about my playing than some of my heroes is that I play a matched grip in the left hand, for instance. My left hand is weird. I wouldn't recommend my left hand to anyone, but it sounds different.
Yeah.
It sounds different, but it doesn't sound like other matched grip players because I do some things so it doesn't sound like that sometimes. And it has to do with, angle of the stick and this sort of thing. The type of cymbal I like or cymbal sounds I like, how I tune my drums. I think that's part of maybe why you could recognize me. And I didn't change that stuff up all that much. I don't have like a drastically different sound on one record than another.
It's true.
Maybe it's slightly different. I'm not opposed to that, actually. I'm not opposed to completely changing it up. It's just that I don't usually do that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you also have these kind of experiences, maybe early on your development, but also maybe very recently, where you see a musician that you admire, and that moment, that might be just a second or 2 seconds, but that stays with you forever, and that actually is one of those seeds that we talked about before that can become something big.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a couple of those that you always go back to in your mind, like that you're still feeding from, or that you'd like to share, like important memories of seeing somebody or putting on a record at a certain time, or like something?
Sure. Wow, yeah, absolutely. I can think of a lot of great music I've heard in clubs and concerts, and yeah, I can definitely share some of that. I think when I first came to definitely when I first came to the East Coast, I went to William Patterson College, which is in New Jersey, and I had arrived there from Iowa, and I don't know, must have been on my second or third night on the East Coast, and I remember, riding in with someone to hear Joe Henderson, for instance. So that was the first thing I heard in New York, was Joe Henderson at Fat Tuesdays. Wow. I think it was probably with Al Foster, and I think it was that one, and maybe Rufus Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And but from there, yeah, I remember like the Vanguard, for instance, I remember one occasion sitting next to Tony Williams' hi-hat cymbal, and I remember one occasion sitting next to Elvin Jones' hi-hat cymbal, and I remember other times sitting next to Billy Higgins. Wow. Like from almost a side view, because I don't know if they let people come quite so close these days, but the audience could, if you got there early, you could get a seat where you were almost on stage. You know?
Yeah.
So I remember, for instance, going to see Elvin's band. This was also pretty early when I was on the East Coast, and I remember he sat down and he hit his snare drum and he didn't like it, and I was sitting there, and he took the snare drum and he handed it to me. He said, "Here, have a snare drum." I was like, okay, but he had to get another one out of his trap case because something was wrong. He had a spare, I think, but that was funny. And then I sat next to Tony also. I think it was the first time he played in New York with his quintet with Mulgrew and Wallace Roney and those guys. Yeah. And so I sat next to Tony's hi-hat cymbals. And I remember that night he had some heavy 15-inch hi-hat cymbals too. I remember he was going around, and I remember he was spinning the cymbals to get him in a spot where he liked them better. Why they came together in a nicer way. He got his finger caught in between them, and he was like, "Oh!" and he was in pain.
Yeah.
So some of these experiences, and the music on these occasions was great too. So, but I remember a lot of stuff like that.
Did you go see Tony when he played with Herbie and Ron Carter at the Village Vanguard in the 80s?
Yes, I was there.
Wow. Because I have one bootleg of that.
Oh, can you send it to me?
Sure. No, I thought you would have it too. But,
I don't have it. I was there one night. Oh man, yeah, I really remember that, and that was also soon after that was my first year out here too, and I remember my friend and I, we got tickets, and we went and we stood there early.
Yeah.
You know, to got in a line and stuff. Yeah, I do remember seeing that. And
what kind
actually,
of kit did Tony play in there? Would you play his regular set from when he?
Same one he always had from 1972 on, the big one,
The yellow one.
Yep, 24-inch bass drum, all those drums, those cymbals.
But he played differently in that room, I thought, than on those big stages. When I heard the sound quality of the bootleg is not that great, but I can hear him not hit as hard, like.
Yeah. Actually, the night I was down, I heard a bootleg of it too, and I don't have it, which is why I asked you about it. But
yeah, sure, I'll send it to you.
That'd be awesome. But I was surprised at how great the bootleg I heard sounded. I thought it was excellent, but the night I was down, and I was a big fan of I thought maybe they weren't having their best night or something, and Tony looked pissed, unhappy, very unhappy, and I don't know why.
Jumpsuit?
Yeah, I think so, maybe. I think maybe so. And but he looked unhappy, and there were some drum cases in the back corner, and he just, the whole break he sat at the back of the stage behind these cases and talked to anybody. So I don't know what was going on, but his body language was like he was pissed, and he was playing actually he wasn't playing loud, which was unusual for him, and like you say, and he's playing spaciously, but it was almost like he wasn't trying also the night it was down. It was interesting. As I, maybe if I heard that night now, I'd hear it differently. But at the time I thought, this is one of their least magical nights. Is what I thought.
That can be a lesson too.
Which they, on their least magical night, they sound great. You can't take that for granted, but
yeah.
But we all have little ups and downs. But I'd like to hear that other night. I hope that's another night.
We'll see. You let me know which one it is.
I'll never know.
Yeah.
I can't remember the sound of it. But.
It's so great that they returned to a club like this in the 80s, where they were like, pop stars in a way.
Yeah, and not too long before that, I think it might have been a year or two before I came to New York. Keith Jarrett's trio also played there with Gary and Jack.
Wow.
There's also a week, I think, that they played there.
Wow.
Yeah, that might have been 80. I think it was after they did the first of their trio records in 83, 84, somewhere in that time.
It's nice to hear them in a not reverby sound, right? Like the Blue Note recordings, they're cool too, right?
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Autumn Leaves on there.
Yeah.
Ooh, intro. Woo.
Yeah.
Playing that. But and you were asked. I could go on and on about other things.
Please do. If you feel like it.
I remember seeing. A Song X concert at Town Hall with Ornette and Pat Metheny and Charlie Hayden and Jack. That was great. And somehow my friend and I were able to sneak backstage. I don't know how we got back there with no credentials. It probably wouldn't happen now, but we were able to talk with Ornette, and he was super nice. And,
wow. What did you ask? Did you ask him anything?
I think my friend who's an alto player, he was asking more, maybe asking something, but he was Ornette was actually asking us stuff. He was interested in us. It was interesting. He was like, so what do you do?
Yeah.
That was cool. He was really nice. And I didn't know anybody in the band, so at that time.
Yeah.
So and I remember a particularly memorable version of the Turnaround. And Ornette and Charlie and Jack, I think they might have just played trio at that point. I think it was trio that. But that was a great concert. Let's see. I've heard so many things. I mean, you all heard a lot of concerts, and I've heard classical things. I heard For instance, something completely different. I heard Ligeti's opera in
Wow.
Le Grand Macabre, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard that. I heard that in, I don't know if it's Lincoln Center. I think it was. In New York, you can hear all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Messiaen organ concert. We're hearing. I mean, even older thing. I remember hearing Illinois Jacquette's big band and
Mm.
things like that. All great stuff. All kinds of different great stuff. So.
Mm.
Um,
Was there like a time where you exclusively, or maybe not exclusively, but very obsessively followed one drummer?
no.
Like
Well,
followed him around in town or tried
no.
to see
I
every
never.
concert?
No, because for me that's getting in a dangerous area where if you have one main idol and you're trying to be a protege or something, I always felt like it would be hard for me to find my own sound if I did that too.
Yeah.
Because I think if you draw from different sources, then that combination of things is part of what makes you sound the way you are. Whereas if you try to imitate any one person or try to play like them, you can never do a better job of that than they can. So,
That's true.
so you're always catching up. So,
Yep.
so I try to avoid that. I mean, I wouldn't follow. I would follow several guys around, but or go to their gigs, but not always the same drummer.
Hmm. How was it then? A couple of years after you arrived there, and you said the first thing you heard was Joe Henderson, and
Yeah.
then let me see. Then this record came about, and you played with him. How was that?
That wasn't. Yeah. Well, that would have been. I mean, that was. That'd be about 4 years later.
Oh, okay,
Actually.
yeah.
Yeah. That was great. Yeah. I had met Kevin not too long before that record, and we started playing together. And it was great to play with Kevin. It always is. But yeah, he got an offer to do a record for Jazz City, which was a Japanese label at the time. And I had already done a record for them. My first record, Think Before You Think, was done for them.
With Mark Cohen, the
Mark, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so Kevin got an opportunity to do one as well. And, he's thinking about who he could call. And he's like, well, maybe I could call Joe Henderson. So he did. And Joe agreed to do it. And they agreed on, price and sort of thing. And, it was a funny story. I think because Joe said he was going to use his frequent flyer miles and buy his own plane ticket. But then when it came time for the date, that was not the case.
Oh, okay.
To get him a ticket, it was a little funny business scene. But so Joe shows, and we did the date. We were all in one room in a real basement studio. Not particularly good sounding room, but again, David Baker made it sound.
I like the sound. Yeah. It sounds good.
Pretty nice. Well, there was an excellent piano there at that studio on Green Street. A lot of the pianists liked it, a Steinway of some sort. I'm not sure, but so yeah, it was great to play with Joe, and that record came out really nice. In fact, I did a little playing with Joe later.
Might I have a recording of that?
I don't know. It wasn't released on like a CD.
Okay.
But
what band was it?
Well, I did a few gigs with Joe in the mid to late '90s. Not too many. I did a trio gig in Kentucky with him and George Mraz, and I did. After he did a record, Porgy and Bess for Verve.
Right. Oh, I have that. Yeah.
Just a few of those gigs. There was a couple in Bern, Switzerland, and
I've seen that. Yeah.
One in Mount Hood, Oregon. So.
Do you have a recording of the trio gig from Kentucky?
I have a cassette of it. It's a terrible sounding cassette. It's very hard to listen to. Yeah, it's difficult.
Okay. I always loved about this record, El Matador, how it's hard for me to put this into words, but Joe isn't really like the featured star of the record. He's part of the ensemble, but you guys were super young, you know? And it seems to me, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, that Kevin really put him in some kind of spotlight. You would normally maybe put him into like featuring the great Joe Henderson or something.
Yeah.
He's sort of, and also this sounds maybe too negative, but he disappears into the band. You know, he fits really into with you guys, you know? And I always,
that's great. Yeah.
I always loved that about the record because he seems like he really got into the music. He had to learn the stuff, you know, and then he took his solo, and listening to everybody else, you know, it seems very, very like a collective thing, and I really loved that about it.
Yeah, I did too, and most of the tunes he and Steve play together on, Steve Wilson.
Yeah.
And so they get an ensemble sound together. But I mean, Joe was on a lot of those Blue Note records where there were multiple horns, you know, where he, you know, played in ensembles and, you know, knew how to blend in. And also, I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff that's either recording or on video with Joe with the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis Orchestra. So that's another interesting place to hear Joe, where he's just, you know, not the featured star all the time, but, you know, gets his moment, of course, to play. But it's playing in the section and, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I remember Joe at that session, El Matador. Yeah, he would stay in the studio. Like if anyone went in the control room to listen to a take, he wouldn't go listen to it. The other thing that was noticeable when listening to the takes of I remember of that session was that he's a first take kind of guy. Like he would play best solo on the first run through. In fact, I remember there was a rehearsal day where we were getting sound where we weren't planning to use any of it, and I think didn't. But I think there's maybe some Joe on there that was even better.
Oh, okay.
Actually, there's a ballad on there which is based on a Hindemith tune.
Yeah.
The one I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, Joe has, I don't know if you know, but he goes up for a high note, and he has like a Stan Getz moment.
He admires Stan Getz.
I think he did, yeah. But he goes up and he hits this vibrato in a certain way, and it just really sounds like Stan for one note. That was interesting.
Yeah. Did you, when you play with somebody like that, are you the kind of guy that would ask him all kinds of questions?
Joe was very soft-spoken, and no, I wouldn't. I don't remember much, if any, conversation other than, hello, I'm honored to play with you, or something, you know, something along those lines. I don't remember a lot of conversation. Also, the gigs I did with him, there was, I think, nothing said before or after on any of those gigs. And he show up right before the gig and be gone right after.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, you play with so many long-standing bands where I assume it's a different scenario when you play with them before and after a set, you know. So what happens with you when you're in a situation like that, playing with somebody like that, and then he doesn't say a word before or after? How do you treat it?
It's a strange feeling. It's, you know, it's cryptic. It's you don't know what you don't know whether you did a good job or you didn't do a good job. You don't really know. But it wasn't just that way with me. It was that way with pretty much most people, as I understand it. And I'm sure other people got to know him and have conversations and things, but I did not. And here again, I didn't play with him very much, really, just on a few occasions there.
I think for a long time I've known a photograph of you as a very young man sitting next to Dizzy Gillespie, and he kind of moves his hands, and he doesn't move them because it's a photo, but it
Yeah.
seems like he's in motion or something, and it looks like a drumming motion.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what did he tell you? Do you remember?
He had just heard me play something. I think he gave me a compliment. He said I had good time. But then we were talking about time, and he must have been talking about something, symbol or whatever. I don't remember. I saw the picture years later. Now they had it at Stanford. It's from Stanford Jazz Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
It was a brief moment, and someone caught it on camera. I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, and I think he wandered into my ensemble and listened and made a few comments and left.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on? I mean, how did you arrive at the impeccable time that you have? Do you spend a lot of time on this, or how do you work on that?
It's a continual process. I'm still working on it. Not only to play steady time, but thinking about how it feels also. Yeah, I do work on playing, for instance, in time, in tempos, and certain tempos I noticed I had more trouble with than others. Like there might be a tempo where I noticed that the time would creep up a little bit or something like that, and so then I have to work on that tempo. I've continued to do that through my career, actually, to work on, if I heard a recording of myself and didn't think I was quite nailing the tempo, there's a tempo to practice. There's something to practice that afternoon, let's say 160 beats a minute or whatever. What I started doing sometimes is I would set a tempo, like on a metronome, listen to the tempo for a second, turn off the metronome.
Would you put it on 2 and 4, or would you put it?
I put it on quarter notes usually. Unless it's a fast tempo, I might put it on half note.
Yeah.
Probably on 1 and 3 actually. But I'd play the tempo, and then I'd turn the metronome off. I just want to hear what the tempo is. And then I would play for 10 minutes, 15 minutes by myself, and turn it back on.
Yeah.
See if something happened to the tempo.
Yeah.
Because I think when people only practice with a metronome, they're kind of using it as a crutch.
Like being too reliant on it, dependent on it. Yeah.
So, but there's something different you can learn from practicing with a metronome, like, something like, I rush triplets or something like that. You can maybe learn something from that too. But one way I would work on that is like I just said. So that's one thing. And I practiced with a lot of time by myself, just play time, but also I played a lot with recordings, and I still practice some with recordings because it gives me something to play off of,
Yeah, me too.
And if I can't think of something to practice, then I can always play with a recording, and it's fun, And I don't have to take it too seriously. I can play a totally different tempo against the recording or something too. There's no real limitation. So.
And it's a way to play with the greats,
That's true. It's nice.
They won't really react, but
no,
you can try to react.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I love that too.
I've done that a lot, and piano. You could. It's like some of the old recordings. You could like turn the stereo to one side and not hear the piano player, or mostly not hear them.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Records, but I had to be careful about that because a lot of like records speed up, slow down.
True. Yeah.
I don't want to like develop bad habits, so I sort of stopped playing with records like for a while, I stopped. Well, I'm not going to play with 4 and more because the stuff speeds up.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to get in the habit of doing that. Even though they're exactly together.
yeah, yeah.
So, or for Life at the Black Hawk, for instance, the tempos slow down.
Mm.
But actually, medium tempos, I think, especially early in my career, they might tend to creep up slightly. So I started practicing with Black Hawk because the stuff slows down. So it was actually taking me the other way.
That's cool. That's cool.
So okay, let me see if I can play it like this. So so stuff like that. Like if I'm just practicing, like say swing tempos, I probably played with milestones a million times.
Yeah.
And not trying to play all of Philly Joe stuff or anything like that. We play, improvise, play some other stuff. And also maybe play a little bit of the Philly Joe stuff if I feel like it, or try to. I can't really make it sound like that, but yeah. So, but the good thing about that record is that the tempos are pretty spot on, and also the drum solos and the fours and trading. The time is so steady through those. So I know that if I can actually trade eights on those things and through the trading, and I know if I play accurately, I'll come out on one because Philly Joe is so steady and it's his solos at that time. Like the time is just like rock solid. So
yeah.
So that was a good record to play with, and a bunch of different swing kind of tempos on there, fast, slow, but I practiced with all kinds of records in my collection, and also other kinds of music, Aretha Franklin records, different things.
Maybe we can talk about a couple of drummers. Your relationships with them, or your experience listening to them, or what you took from them, or whatever comes to mind. What are your thoughts on Jack DeJohnette?
Jack. Well, Jack's definitely one of my biggest influences, and I've gotten to know Jack as well in recent years. Jack, to me, like if you think of like all the great jazz drummers, after chronologically, like after Elvin and Tony, I say that Jack would be slightly after them, definitely after Elvin, and actually he's older than Tony, but Tony appeared on the scene, I think, a little earlier.
Yeah.
But only by a couple years, maybe, as far as being known internationally or whatever. And I definitely think of Jack as the most important drummer after, at least to me, but I think maybe in general in terms of influence in that tradition after those guys, after Elvin and Tony, and also maybe conceptually, I don't know if the most advanced, but very advanced conceptually to me, as far as what he does with his limbs and different things.
Yeah.
First Jack I heard, I think, was on a record I got, or maybe my dad bought it. I must have been 8 or 9 years old. Straight Line by Freddie Hubbard. So, that was where it started, and then I remember buying. When I was a little bit older, I remember buying New Directions in Europe on ECM, and loving the sound of the drums and Jack's playing on that, and it just sort of went from there. I love his playing with, say, piano trios as well. Very, Jack can play, but he could play like he can get a lot of sound out of the drums, but he also knows how to play in very sensitive situations, where brushes, or he can play a lot of stuff, or he can leave a lot of space. Great listener, really good listener, and listens for the spaces in the music, and play over the bar line, but in a way that works. Where other people try that and it might not work.
Yeah.
So, but that's listening and ears and some intuition. I think in terms of sound too, influenced me. The clarity of each limb, to hear each limb clearly. Whereas some other drummers, and I'm not. This isn't a slight to them. For instance, some drummers don't do all that much with their hi-hat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it sort of blends in, or they mostly play it as a timekeeping device. And I've gotten to know Jack as well, and I've been to his house, and I know his family, and he's been super nice. So that's been awesome.
Yeah, actually, that maybe to deviate a little bit, that clarity is actually something also that I wanted to talk to you about, because I'm also admiring that a lot in your playing, the clarity to really hear where every note is supposed to be. There's no question about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Except how do you do it? Jack is a role model in terms of that for you. But how about somebody else like Roy Haynes? He has something like that, a similar thing.
You're on my trail with this stuff, because these are the guys that have influenced me the most. And I would say if there were three people as far as the kind of stuff that mostly you've heard me do, probably the biggest three are Jack, Roy, and Tony.
Yeah.
Williams. Those are, and I'm influenced by a lot of other people too, but with those guys in particular, I think, I know that I play a lot of their stuff.
Well, that's how our tradition works, right? I mean,
yeah, I guess, yeah, I know, yeah, sure, and they got stuff from different places, but
and also from each other, because Jack DeJohnette, he admired Roy Haynes and Tony,
Absolutely, yeah, mm-hmm, yeah, and Elvin, a big influence.
I think in the beginning, Jack sounded to me like a mixture of Elvin, Tony, and Roy.
Yeah.
Like when you would hear in like '66 or those records with Jackie McLean or something, these
yeah.
ones.
Yeah. Jackknife.
Yeah.
Actually, I heard a track of that recently. You heard that track.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack does sound a little. He sounded a little toward Roy on that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but not not exactly. And he already had a lot of his own sounds.
Sure. Yeah. I wonder where these cymbals are that he played like in the mid '60s till.
I don't think he has them.
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I always liked those.
Those were probably old K's at that time. If it was mid '60s, I don't know if they were K's. But actually, the record "Power to the People."
Oh man, that's my favorite Joe Henderson record.
Yeah, mine too. I think. I think that's a different symbol by that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different one. Or if you've ever heard also the Chick Corea record, Sundance.
Man, that's the Complete Is sessions. I know them as the Complete Is sessions.
It's out in several different volumes.
But Sundance is one of the songs on there. Yeah. That's my favorite Chick record. That's my favorite Chick.
Right up there with mine too. I don't know. It might. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I have a. Of course, you would have to say, "Now He Sings, Now He Sobs" is is an important record.
That's maybe the. Go ahead.
But I have to say, the Complete Is sessions, Sundance, that's the one that's closest to my heart. That's my.
I remember talking to Chick briefly about it, and he remembered that the heads were messed up. He says, the heads were sloppy or something. That's what he. Yeah. I think that was his response. But
I don't care. I love how messy they are. I love that.
He has some beautiful writing on there.
Yeah.
It's that tune for Bill Evans.
Song for the Wind. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
I
Great.
transcribed the song.
Great writing on the whole record.
Yeah, Sundance also is a cool tune. Little hippie-esque, just a vamp, you know.
Ah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's that Hubert Laws, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And Woody
Yeah.
Shaw.
Yeah.
I wonder if this was the only time Woody Shaw and Jack DeJohnette played together. Oh no, maybe on the Blue Note in the 80s there was this Blue Note celebration.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they played a song together there.
Yeah. I think so
But
too.
I don't know if there's another record with Woody Shaw and the Zawinul with the Zawinul face on it. There's some Jack plays on the record and Woody Shaw too, I think.
Okay. I don't have that one. I know that I've seen the record a million times and I saw it.
Oh, I think you'd love it. You know, also in terms of two keyboards, it's
Yeah.
Herbie and Zawinul, you know, and it's the
Yeah, I think I have heard it, but it's just been, I
Sure.
never owned it, so it's
Sure.
not one I, really have up there. But
I think Zawinul preferred this In a Silent Way version to the Miles version, you know,
oh, okay.
because it has all these chords in there and beautiful different sections that you don't hear on the Miles recording. It's a great record.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you're actually checking out these days. What interests you, and what is the last thing that you said? You know, I always like when somebody says I can't stop listening to that record. You know, and something that really sparks your imagination or whatever you feel like sharing.
I mean, I could tell you what I was listening to yesterday, but I don't know if it was.
Sure. What was it?
Oh, let's see. What am I? You have this? You have this as
Yeah.
that's a good one. Or if you
That's-
get you got to get the CD version because it has this kind of a lost session with Herbie Hancock.
Yeah. Isn't also Herbie on? Herbie
Yeah,
is on the
he was
record.
he was never on the original record because they didn't release the session.
Okay, I have the session with Herbie and I think Roy Haynes, right?
Yeah. Some of it's really good. Some of it's a little messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very interesting listening. So enjoyed that, and of course, Herbie and Roy Haynes are two of my favorites. So
Yeah, but there are not a lot of records where Herbie and Roy Haynes play together, right?
I can think of one other.
I have Jackie McLean, It's Time.
Yeah.
That's a great record.
Yeah, it's a little uneven, but yeah, the horns are really out of tune. But
Yeah, that's sometimes, that can happen with Jackie McLean, you know.
for sure, and that record maybe more so, but yeah, I think I kind of like this one more, the Roland Kirk one.
I have to go back to that one.
I like that one's got moments too. The Jackie one, I like it too.
Do you know that bootleg from, I think it's Massey Hall, Herbie, Dave Holland and Roy Haynes and Roy Hargrove and Kenny
Roy
Garrett
Haynes. Oh, no, I never heard that.
playing Charlie Parker tunes.
Oh,
It's cool. It's cool to hear them.
I
I
never
think
heard
it's
that.
2003.
Ah,
As
okay.
another cool example of Herbie and,
They played together then. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't play together much. Yeah, I guess, in the 60s, I'm surprised they didn't play together a little more on a few sessions and things.
Yeah.
But
Have you heard about that Roy Haynes used to have a quartet playing at Slugs in the
With Wayne?
60s with Wayne?
yeah, and Cecil McVie, was it?
I think so. I only saw, advert.
Herbie, right?
I'd love it to be Herbie, but I don't know. I
think
only
it was.
saw advertisement for it,
Mm-hmm.
and I also talked to Marcus Gilmore about it. But
Oh,
you
yeah.
haven't heard anything about that.
I've never heard it, no.
Ah,
Well,
man,
But that would be cool.
that would be cool. I'm wondering what kind of material, Roy would bring for that kind of band, or would he ask Wayne to bring some songs, or curious about that.
I heard his band a lot over the
Yeah.
years.
Did you get to meet him also? Talk to him?
Yeah. First time I met, This is going to be a good story then. My first time I met Roy is at the uh, Notre Dame Jazz Festival. So I was at William Patterson College, and there was a competition for small groups, big jazz festival and a competition. So we went with a group from our college uh, to play, to compete, and the judges were Charlie Hayden, Roy Haynes, uh, Frank West, Red Brodney, and Larry Novak.
Mm.
Who I don't know if you know Gary Novak.
I know Gary Novak, yeah.
But that's his father. So,
Mm-hmm.
so those were the judges, and so I was already, a huge Roy Haynes fan, and heavily under his influence as well at that point. But so Roy's there, and so we play, and afterwards we get a chat with the judges a little bit, and I meet Roy, and pretty much the first thing he says to me, he says, "Ain't many of you redheaded motherfuckers."
Wow. Yeah.
But I've been around Roy a few times, and I got to know him a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, one instance was in Japan when with the Bud Powell band with Chick Corea, you know what I mean? When he was in the Bud Powell tribute thing, they were playing in Japan, and I was playing there also with Schofield. But Chick had written an orchestral piece that was going to be played with a symphony there, with basically the Bud Powell group plus the symphony. But Roy didn't want to. He didn't want to do the orchestra thing. I was asked to do it.
Yeah.
So, but I remember Roy was hanging out there, and I mean, he came to rehearsal, and he was kind of sitting out there. So I got to know him a little bit.
You've been working so long with Bill Carrothers, and I'm wondering how that started, and also how that led to you guys playing duo. How did you guys meet, and how did that evolve into that kind of chemistry that you have together?
I think we were both pretty young musicians in New York in the would have been the very early '90s. I think I had heard of him, but he called me up and asked me to come over and play a session one day where he was living in Brooklyn with a bass player, and we played. So that was fun. But I think we didn't play for a little while after that, but then we played some more, and just informally. And then at some point, Bill wanted to do a recording. Actually, he wanted to do a record, and I think he basically produced it himself, and it ended up coming out. But with Gary Peacock.
Oh, Home Row.
Which became Home Row. Yeah. But it didn't come out like in that form until many, many years later. But it was actually done in the, maybe, I don't know, 92, 93, somewhere in there. So I did that record with Bill, and I really, really loved how that came out, and thought he played great. And obviously he had some different stuff than I had heard, than most of the other players in New York were going for. He just had some personal stuff that was different. Yeah. And also harmonically very free, which I liked a lot. And having listened to some different types of music, like, I wasn't into Messiaen yet, but I had, I was into like Stravinsky and Bartok and stuff like that. So the way Bill played appealed to me, and I think it was a little bit after that. I think it was my suggestion actually that we play some trio without drums. I moved out bass, So we started playing with Anton Dinner, a saxophonist that I knew from my college days.
That's the Ghost Ship record.
Yeah, and we did one before that called
Oh,
Abandon All Hope. That I don't know if it's available now, but
I haven't heard of that. No.
there were actually two records. But the first one was, it's something Bill printed up himself, so it was maybe not distributed in a formal sense. I'm not sure. So we did that group, uh, and then we also did some duo. But Bill was very good at playing without bass. Um, and very free with that, and also like the lower register of the piano a lot, which sort of fills up the space in a different way.
Yeah.
So, and I think Bill avoided the common traps of guys, a lot of people at that time trying to play like Herbie and McCoy and
Yeah.
different things, and Bill had something different. So, and great ears. And then when I did, I guess it was Snide Remarks. Yeah, I had his sound in mind, and I mean, if I'd chosen a different piano player, it would have been very different. So uh, he brought something personal to it, which I thought gave it a more unique sound.
Mm. I love that you went back and played with him for the Space Squid record. That you used him again. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
love that. That
it was sort.
that it keeps continuing your thing. You know.
Uh huh. Yeah, me too. Yeah, um, yeah. In some ways, that record was a little bit like almost the same band as Telepathy.
Yeah.
I mean, not really, but it was similar. I mean, Seamus and Bill together, for instance, a little bit similar conceptually.
Yeah.
Um, I think anytime I work with Bill, I want to give him a good amount of freedom to do his thing. You know,
Yeah. That's a
Rep,
sign of a great band leader. You know, recognizing somebody's talent and also singularity in a way, and then
mm-hmm.
exposing him, and also exposing that special thing that he has, and finding a scene for that. I think that's what a great band leader does. You know, I love that. It's cool.
Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah,
listening.
sure. How about that trio with Walter Smith and Larry Grenadier? Are you going to try to tour a little bit with that, or?
I don't know. It might be difficult to get those guys together for a tour because they're busy, But I might try. I'm trying to get a recording out that I did in late February, so I don't know how it's going to come out yet. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in terms of release, it's already done and it's mixed. In April of last year, a week at the Village Vanguard,
Mm.
and we're going to do a week coming up here in about 2 months at the Village Vanguard. That's the thing I'm working on as a leader right now is doing
Yeah.
that. And actually for the first time in being a band leader, it's playing without any piano or keyboards.
Mm.
I'm really enjoying that, and I mean, different space that there is.
Sure. Yeah.
There's either more space to fill up, or if without a chordal instrument, or I can just leave the space and you just hear more space in the music, which
Mm.
is nice too. But we really liking playing with Walter and Larry together. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good combination. So uh, we were talking about chemistry of bands and
Yeah.
such, and for me, this one it's happening for me.
Yeah. Maybe maybe as a last question, um, I'm obsessed with the topic of getting inspired or getting finding inspiration.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm always asking people, and I want to ask you, what do you do when you feel not inspired? When you feel when you feel like maybe also self-critical in a way, like
Yeah.
everybody has that, I suppose, like I can't play, or all I do is going to that one direction or anything. I mean, that's the stuff I'm thinking at times, and
Hmm.
I'm always trying to look for new stuff or new ways to get out of that feeling. um, and getting out of that hole and then finding new stuff. How do you go about that when you maybe have similar thoughts, or maybe you don't, but you still have something that yeah, that can give you inspiration.
Well, if I'm feeling down about music or my playing or something, I might step away for a little bit, or I mean, if we're just talking about a particular day, I would just, I've had days recently where I've gone in the practice room with the drums and realized that I really didn't feel like playing, that I was sort of forcing myself to do it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I just stop and I don't play, or I take a walk. Sometimes just taking a walk is good, and that's a very simple thing to do. But I might come back and I might feel different, or I feel different the next day. Or there's all the different things that affect how you feel about how you play on a given day and your particular mood and whatever. But fortunately, that doesn't happen to me day after day after day, which would be a drag.
Yeah.
I have days when I'm more inspired and less inspired, and um, I don't know. Sometimes just taking a little time off can be helpful too. I think, you know, sometimes when I come back from tour, for instance, like a fairly long tour, if I don't have something coming up, I might not play the drums for 2, 3 weeks if I don't have to. I might not. So, but especially I think as musicians get older, it's good to rest the ears a bit.
Yeah.
Because a lifetime of sound and dealing with sound, especially I'm a drummer, so
Yeah.
so I have to be careful about that. But sometimes I might listen to music for inspiration. I might, instead of working so hard on what I'm doing, I might just decide to listen to some music for a day rather than try to create it.
Okay, man. I really want to thank you for doing this and taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your interest. I'm flattered and enjoy your work. So thank you.
Thank you so much.